Hello, my name is Melanie Hall. I'm representing Team New Zealand for Group Project 4. The article we chose was Language Shift and Host Society Attitudes, Dutch Migrants Who Arrived in New Zealand Between 1950 and 1965 by Crezee. This article is about language shift and maintenance in a Dutch migrant population in New Zealand. The researcher, a bilingual Dutch English-speaking migrant herself, reported on the language use of a group of these Dutch migrants. Previous studies have recognized the high rates of language shift among L1 Dutch migrants. This study focused on one possible reason for that shift. Crezee hypothesized that the attitude of a migrant's host society may impact their choice to shift from their L1, in this case Dutch, to their L2, English. To give you a bit of background, in the 1950s, tens of thousands of Dutch citizens migrated to New Zealand. However, the New Zealand government in the 50s greatly favored English-speaking migrants. Migrants who arrived in New Zealand at this time were expected to assimilate with the lifestyle of Anglophone New Zealanders. The government also made a point of dispersing Dutch migrants across the country, which resulted in very few opportunities for these migrants to speak Dutch outside of the home. The author was primarily concerned with the migrants' treatment by New Zealanders and how or if that affected their L1 usage. Now, her sample consisted of 30 Dutch migrants, 20 female, 10 male, who had arrived in New Zealand between 1950 and 1965, when they were between the ages of 18 and 39. They were interviewed in 2006 and 2007, when they were aged between 65 and 95. All of the respondents were able to comfortably converse in English, and most had received some English instruction before migrating, and had subsequently improved their English by being immersed in English-speaking communities. All research was conducted in the form of in-home interviews. Respondents were given a sociolinguistic life history questionnaire, which included questions about their social and educational backgrounds, including their manner of English acquisition. The researcher was also interested in how the respondents maintained their L1s and L2s, and in what settings they were exposed to each, so work, school, or in their personal lives. Another question was about the host society attitude at the time of migration, and then at the time of the interview. In addition to these more formal questions, the researcher acquired data from the respondents' adult children. This was an important aspect of this study. There's often a discrepancy between self-reported and observed linguistic behavior. Now I'll go ahead and discuss some of the findings of the study. As I previously mentioned, the New Zealand government made a point of spreading Dutch migrants across the country. This would lead to the assumption that they did not have many opportunities to use their native language. The findings support this, with 50% of migrants reporting that they spoke very little to no Dutch in a social environment after arriving in New Zealand. Questions about the workplace garnered similar results. Dutch migrants were actively discouraged by their employers to speak Dutch, even to those from their country. 20 out of 30 respondents reported that they felt pressure to speak English at all times. That covers the social and work environments. Now, how about the migrants speaking Dutch in their homes? 70% of respondents reported that they spoke Dutch at home, all or most of the time after arrival. Other studies cited show that half of respondents switched to using English at home within just a few years of arrival. The overwhelming reason for this shift was for the benefit of their children. Parents wanted to ensure, quote, that their children could take part in the dominant mode of education and culture. And among this group, the majority of them report making the switch to English at home because they were told to do so by a person in a position of authority, such as a nurse or a teacher. At this time, the benefits of bilingualism were widely unknown, and speaking two languages was often seen as being a detriment to one's education. One respondent even said, quote, "The first thing the teacher said to us was, 'Don't speak Dutch to your children. It stops their education.' And at the time, we believed that," end quote. Overall, the Dutch migrants tried their best to assimilate, but were still saddened when they were not perceived as being true New Zealanders based on their accents. Now, a key question in this study was whether the migrants felt that the attitudes of New Zealanders had changed towards the speakers of languages other than English. And the majority of respondents felt that yes, the host society was more tolerant of them now than they were in the 1950s. Yeah, we thought the data was presented very well. The author relied heavily on previously established studies and methods for language attrition research. I think a stronger case could be made if we had a larger sample size. This was only a sample size of 30 people. There's also an issue I see of concentrated geographic area. All of the participants interviewed were living in the greater Auckland area at the time, so I wonder if their experience could have been region-specific. Overall, this article provides us with interesting data as we consider the implication that a host society has attitudes has on the maintenance of a migrant's L1. I think this is especially important given the large number of people migrating to English-speaking countries all around the world. This shows us kind of on a small scale how our attitude as an English-speaking society could affect the preservation of languages of migrant communities. This actually reminded me of a passage from our Mesthrie and Bhatt text, which says, quote, "Immigrant Englishes are frequently implicated in subtractive bilingualism, that is, unstable bilingualism resulting in the gradual loss of a community's erstwhile language." And to me, that's a sad thought. Language is so intrinsically linked with culture and identity that it seems tragic to lose a language completely after a few generations in an English-speaking country. Thank you.